Couldn't any being attached to human voice pity and not harm me? Around me the cabin was almost black. The fire was no more than red glow. "Pull the latch string," I called. "No latch string out." Slowly I crossed the dim cabin, opened the door, and faced 6 men bundled in wool and fur. A dwarfish man in a wolfskin held up a blazing pine knot big as a thigh. "Her tracks come to your door, madam. Give her up now. Look in my house if you like, but I must return to my childbirth bed." I knew I harbored no runaway slave. From the big torch which they stuck in a snowbank, each lighted a taper of fat pine kindling. Like ice demons, frost-caked in their mustaches, they clomped in. The room glowed, and rosin-scented smoke curled to the ceiling. The dwarf dropped to all fours, truly looking like a wolf snuffing under the beds. "Could you bring in wood for me, afore you leave? Sometimes the runaways walk backward to throw us off the chase." The dwarf's voice was soft as fur. "She's not here." He scampered across the room to the door, and the pack followed their leader. Someone eased the door shut, and the cabin was utterly dark. I listened to the crunch of the men's boots going toward the river, which was frozen solid. Fear stilled my labor, and I slept, and dreamed that the dwarf asked me my name. "Una," I said, and woke myself to the terrible cold and darkness. I shivered, and the bed shivered. I thought the bed made a friendly signal that it too was cold, and I was not alone. Then I heard a muffled voice, coming, it seemed, from my own belly. I shivered. The bed shivered. "Oh, natural vibration," I said aloud, but did not know how to further address a vibration. And so I laughed. Then I jiggled the bed on purpose, and it jiggled back. And 2 jiggles, and twice the mattresses jiggled in return. After I jiggled 7 times, and exactly 7 jiggles were returned, I giggled, and a voice said, "We be lots warmer we put our skins together." I was not alone. I felt her body moving between the 2 mattresses. She thrust out her head and with a smooth lunge slid out onto the braided rug. I lifted the covers and welcomed the runaway into my bed. She had run far in the snowy night, and her body was colder than mine. When my labor resumed, Susan, I learned her name, went out to get wood. After she kindled a blaze, I could see her enfolded in a quilt, the fireplace glow catching the red patch blocks. I saw the dark curve of her head and her small pigtails sticking up. When my baby did not come, I asked her to reach into me, to help me, to deliver my child as best she could. And she did. We named the baby Liberty, but he was listless and did not try to suckle me. Susan stayed with me, but my baby died. That night, with the wind howling above the snow-laden roof, I thought of wind and canvas at sea and of Ahab. In his age, with passion, Ahab had given me seed. I, in my youth, had failed to birth a thriving child. The only comfort was to curl toward the warmth of Susan's body, radiant beside me in bed. I nestled against her as though she were my husband, mother, sister, shadow, angel. When neighbors came, I hid Susan in a sea chest. They came to tell me that my mother's buggy had overturned in the snow, and she had frozen to death. They chopped a single grave into the frozen ground, and I buried my dear ones in the Kentucky soil. Then I determined to help Susan escape. Though the river was no longer a frozen sheet, we felt she could jump from floe to floe, as we had heard other runaways had done. We hammered nails through the soles of an old pair of my mother's shoes so that Susan's feet would better grip the ice. From the Kentucky bank, I saw shapes in the ice rafts, mostly like enormous flat animals. The light of the full moon glistened on the snowy bank and on the ice as Susan stepped over black running water from floe to floe. Sometimes she rowed till a gap narrowed. While the current swept Susan and the ice downstream, I prayed to her ice raft. Carry her close. Carry her close now. The floe that wheeled her against the far shore was like the palm of a hand, open and presentational. Then came our shouts from both banks of the river. Freedom! But, as I have said, Captain Ahab was not my first husband, whom I met when he visited my aunt and uncle who kept an island lighthouse. Let me turn back more years to say how it was that I, who was born in Kentucky on the banks of the Ohio, came to be with aunt and uncle near New Bedford. When I was 12, my mother sent me there to save my life, for she was afraid that my father would kill me. What incited my father to fury was my lack of Christian belief. I wanted no part of the church because I could not believe its dogma. Perhaps there was some imbalance in my brain, I don't know. But the belief that was imbibed by everyone I knew, with scarcely a moment of skepticism, seemed to me most unlikely. Whether there was God or not, I admitted I did not know. But it was Jesus as God, or the Son of God, that seemed to me highly unlikely. How do you know it's true? I asked. One would say that the Bible was God's holy word and that it said so, but I saw no reason to think it holy just because that was the custom. Did I not feel myself a sinner? They would ask. Readily did I acknowledge I had many shortcomings, but why should I think there was a hell waiting to swallow me? And what was the evidence that any part of me was immortal? Perhaps I just wished it so. And how could belief that one good man, long ago, was actually the incarnation of God, wipe away my sins? What possible connection could there be between the two ideas? If you believe the sky is red, I said, would it make the corn grow? At this, my father struck my face with his open hand. Believe, he shouted. Neither you nor I can command belief, I replied. Though I was only 12, I was shocked not so much at the blow, but by the calmness of my own voice. But tears had jumped into my eyes. My father rushed out of the cabin, harnessed the buggy, and rode away into the woods, lashing the horse. My mother came to sit at the table. She remained unconverted. Why did his wrath not fall on her? With a light stroke, her fingers acknowledged the smarting of my cheek. What are we to do with your unbelief? my gentle mother asked. "Let him accept me as I am, as you do, as we both are. It's through my blood that tolerance and unbelief have run to you." She gestured that, 12-year-old girl though I was, I should come and sit on her lap. "My father was a Quaker of Rhode Island," she said, "and my sister is a Unitarian." When my father returned, he was morose. "A struggle with the devil," he told me. "I will ask you again in a week." When he next asked about my belief, he found that the week was to no avail, nor the months, though my father's rage at his helplessness compounded, and each time he struck me he added a blow. "Children, obey your parents," he thundered. Each time I watched him drive away in a fury, lashing the horse. Once my father did not drive away, but stood in the cabin door holding the buggy whip. My mother stepped before him and said only, "No." He went into the yard and lashed the little stump where I liked to sit, till foam came to the corners of his mouth, and he fell in a faint. Then my mother wet a cloth, went to him, bathed his forehead, crooned his name. "Ulysses, Ulysses." That night my mother asked me if I would consent to live with her sister. "She is a Unitarian," she said again. "With her you can believe what you will. Only your behavior must be according to what is commonly held to be good. You must be kind, as you always have been." And that is how I came to live at the lighthouse. The lighthouse itself became my church, my single tall tree trunk, my faith in stone and earth, and eventually my conduit to the sky. The morning of our departure, after loading the trunks, my father seated himself on my stump in the yard. I almost passed him without looking at him, but he loomed like a black rock whose size and shape I must register in order to pass safely around. But I looked in his eyes, and it was as though lightning leapt from both of us. Instant and powerful, undeniable connection. He gasped, "Una!" I ran to him for a farewell embrace. His hands on both my shoulders, he pushed me back to look again into my eyes. He croaked, "Doubt not that I love you." I made one quick nod and fled to the buggy. As the buggy wheels began to turn, as Mother and I left the cabin, I waved one quick pass of the palm through the air. We were reversed. Now my father sat on the stump, and I rode away in the buggy. My mother, who had been to visit Aunt and Uncle on the island once before, first pointed out the lighthouse to me from the ferry. It seemed only a line, a short vertical line with one end in the sea and one end in the sky. How unaspiring it seemed. Such a puny human effort to draw a mark an inch up the dome of the great sky. But suddenly, at the top of that stubby thing, there was a glint. "It's on!" The exclamation broke from me. No. She pressed my hand, for she too was excited. "It shines only at night. The sunlight has caught the window pane like a mirror. I wish that it were taller." She laughed. "Accept the world, Una.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.